What's the last one? Leadership disruption.
Leadership disrupted. So, what kind of leadership is going to be needed? What kind of metrics are going to be needed to drive leadership?
Mm-hmm.
And what kind of thinking is going to be needed at a leadership level to lead people that are in an ecosystem primarily? They're not going to be in a hierarchical system in the future.
Gotcha.
We're going to be working across the world, different time zones, mostly at home, small offices, totally globalized type of system.
Yep.
What leadership is needed to do that?
Okay. Okay, welcome back, man.
Awesome to be with you again, mate.
So, just as a reminder, if you haven't seen the other video we did, I'll put a link to it in the section below. But there is such a good conversation that's happening in the world of artificial intelligence and bots and augmented leadership, augmented staffing. Let's talk a little bit about human capital.
Yeah.
Human capital is a really interesting concept. I think it's really there's a lack of understanding around it.
Yep.
Why is human capital so important and interesting to you as it influences Verity, but just also from a personal career management level? Why is it tickle your fancy?
I think human capital is it's really interesting because great organizations are still made up of people. I'm always amazed by sort of the Maori perspective that it's the people, right? And I've always believed that. I think the way people are interacting now and the way organizations are interacting with their people is changing. So what makes human capital really interesting at the moment are these quantum shifts or these massive pivots that are coming.
Give me an example.
Well, I mean, think about automation as an issue, right? I mean, a lot of people have built their relationship with the economy based on their skills, whereas right now, or very soon to happen and is happening, skills just won't be enough.
Yeah.
Right? Skills will be maybe a door opener for you, but how you are with your skills, how you are with the world, and how you deploy your skills, this is going to be a bigger question. So having metrics and being able to understand these kinds of things, it's massive.
Sure.
So how are people going to be awesome in an environment that they don't quite understand yet, in an environment that's changing quicker than people can actually deal with? Now this becomes a very interesting problem and a great opportunity for organizations.
Where does the responsibility lie? Is it in the person, the individual? Do they need to have some responsibility as to, okay, my goodness, my job is a bunch of tasks that I do over and over and over again, and there's a good chance that a bot's going to replace me? Or is it the responsibility of the organization to help that person understand that they are in a job that will one day be replaced by a machine, and we need to help upskill the individual? Because my hope is that the people who watch this video are at both levels, right? That they're not just we're not just talking to executives who need to be aware of their people, but we're also talking to individuals who are starting their careers or who are mature in their careers, but they don't know where to go next.
100%. So
where is the responsibility line?
That is a great question, and I think the responsibility is shared. It's a shared responsibility. You can't put that responsibility on any one person at this time. And so I'd like to even expand that. So you say, look, it's on an individual and it's on a workplace. I would say we have to expand that into society in general. We need to expand that to university. We need to expand that to school. We need to expand that to conversations we're having at home. It becomes a societal question because, Moore's law, Moravec's law are still true. Technology is increasing. We cannot stop it. It is going to happen. Automation is a real thing. It is coming, and yet the conversation is still a quiet conversation had quietly and almost nondescriptly, and people are not wanting, they're self-deceived in this space, which is interesting.
Should it be a scary conversation?
Well, I think it's an interesting conversation. I think for people that are very used to doing skills-based repetitive work, it could potentially be an incredibly scary conversation if they've not exercised what I would call their true potential, which is solution-oriented, It's using your skills in a very solution-oriented way, using creativity and other things to really add impact and insight to your job. You're going to have to dig deeper and add more if you want to have a job in the future.
Gotcha.
And the reality for me is that all humans have that capacity, which is it's a very promising and very exciting space. So I said to you, but people that are not willing to broach or have that conversation, they're going to find themselves on the wrong side of the stick.
What does the organization of the future look like? So if I'm a manager, let's get some practical application here. If I'm a manager of 20 to 300 people, how am I supposed to be upskilling my people? How am I supposed to be preparing them for this organization of the future? If I'm a COO or I'm a CEO, what do I care about? Where should I be looking? What should I be reading?
I think that's, again, a great question, and I think there are a couple of things you need to be looking at, but one of the central things will be what kind of people am I working with?
Okay.
So at the moment, I think we understand people in a very two-dimensional...
Sorry to interrupt. Is that where you start? Do you start with people or do you start with infrastructure?
Well, I think infrastructure and people, I think a lot of people want to work in a certain kind of infrastructure. So, I think we could say to ourselves one of the biggest impediments of the past is that we've tried to force people into a working infrastructure.
Yep.
Okay? And I think one of the biggest conversations we have to have is say, well, we want to get this piece of work done, or we want to be this kind of company. What kind of infrastructure works to get that work done, and not be so stoic in our view of what we need to do to get stuff done.
Now, I'm assuming that doesn't mean we ignore history. That doesn't mean we discredit the work that has already been done. I think it's we build upon it, right?
100%. Understanding or having strategy around what you're actually wanting to achieve as an organization or as a company or as a service provider will determine to a large extent what kind of structure you put in place. But once you've got the structure in place, getting the right kind of people is going to become more and more important. So you could imagine if I created a structure that was very loose and where 80% of my team were not office based, and I was saving a lot of money on fixed costs in terms of office, but I was relying on my people to deliver in a remote environment. I would need to know that I'm working with a certain kind of person that can deliver in that environment.
I bet you every manager who's watching goes, I don't know if we can do that.
Well,
but it's cringeworthy.
I mean, people freak out about that, but to be honest with you, I've worked with organizations where they have an office of 100 and 20 sit in the office. They have a one office day a week where everybody comes together, not to work, but to eat together,
to socialize,
to reaffirm the social connections. And in fact, the productivity of those spaces are incredible and measurable. Now, it becomes really important to say, well, how do we measure that kind of thing? One of the biggest problems for management and for investors and for people that want to get stuff done is, well, that's a great idea. How the heck do we manage that stuff? How do we get real metrics in it? And that's where technologies like Verity, other technologies,
Teams,
Yammer, all of those things become incredibly powerful. So that we're collaborating, we're socializing, but we're working at the same time, which is the human thing. It's what we love to do, right? Just from a mobile network perspective, I was looking at some data the other day and how mobile networks are starting to position themselves and how people communicate with each other. So in fact, voice is actually not the thing anymore. The thing is video. The thing is, well, I want to show you an experience
more immersive.
Absolutely. So people are like, well, I went out to lunch, or I went for a boat trip, or I met with a client, and this was the experience. And actually sending video back to the mothership to say, well, this is where I was, this is who I was with, and actually this is how I felt about it, and it's documented. Number one. Number two, it becomes a learning moment for the rest of the organization that are in there. And number three, it becomes a springboard and a collaboration opportunity, even an innovation opportunity, which is real time and a repository. It becomes amazing.
It's there. It's asynchronous.
So it's really powerful.
The other thing it does, and this is a huge tip for people who are watching, it manages your career. Right.
Well, it's a document.
You want to capture how good you are at your job, then use a video to tell people. That's what we're doing right now.
It's pretty revealing, right?
Exactly.
It's real, eh?
Even if you're not great at looking into a camera and telling a story, doesn't matter. Get yourself out there. You've got to start somewhere. Other thing you have on the board there is the employee experience. Talk to me about that.
Well, now we go back to the crushing thing, right? So you could imagine that in a world in the future and work in the future, I mean, talent even now is a big issue. So, I mean, you try and go and get yourself a good dev person in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's not easy to do.
No, especially if you're trying to compete with Microsoft and Amazon.
Do you know what I mean? It's actually a really tough thing to do, right? So you can imagine that the employee experience is going to become more and more important. So you can now start pulling arguments like the millennials and how important impact is, and I mean, all of these different metrics are really important and they're important to a whole different category of person. But my point is, understanding your people and being able to address them in real time becomes more and more important in this new world of work. So how do we get people to be super engaged, super aligned, and super impactful and happy in their work? Because we know that when people are doing great work and their hygiene's been taken care of and their desire to impact the world has been taken care of, and their personal progress has been taken care of, and their professional progress has been taken care of, when all of this is happening, you've got an amazing person on your hands. This is how Air New Zealand does it. This is how other great companies do it.
Gotcha. Right? What does that mean though from what kind of employee do people want in the future? If I'm someone looking to develop my career, what advice are you giving them to be an employee of the future?
Well, look, now we're getting into a laundry list here, or shopping list of what you should be, right? And I think that's also going to be
But what are the principles? Like if I'm watching this, I want some value out of me, me improving on me.
If I was going to say 3 words, I was going to say creative, solution oriented. That's what I was going to say to you. So I was going to, and then I was going to put a rider to that. I was going to say, get very relevant skills for the economy of the future, and then hone your ability to be incredibly creative, to be solution oriented in your outlook in life. So do not expect the ecosystem to feed you. Do not expect your boss to guarantee you. Do not expect customers to buy from you, but expect to be challenged in a very volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment where you're going to have to think on your feet and be a hunter-gatherer, be a sapien, be creative, be awesome to get your stuff done.
Interesting. Good advice. We don't want this video to go too long, unfortunately, because people don't have the attention spans long enough. I don't think they're getting bored, Hans. I think they've got other things they need to do. Of the list up there that you're looking at, what's one more topic that you would really like to nail home?
I think the disruption of leadership. I think the leadership that's required to allow these kinds of ecosystems to actually effectuate is really important. Okay. So I think we're going to be looking at helping leaders, helping people have tools and design methodologies, even strategies to be awesome leaders to these new ecosystems. And I think that's a big conversation that we need to have. And I think it's a very honest conversation. I think it's painful for a lot of leaders to actually take a look in the mirror
and say, "Am I doing
and say,
this?
how self-deceived am I? Like how am I helping people be awesome?" So some of the case studies that I've looked at and even worked on in the last little while is leaders saying, "Look, how do I reach down into the organization where my people are, where the real genius resides? How do I become part of those conversations? How do I influence my people? How do I get into their hearts? And then how do I engage them and be part of this pivot? How do I help my people be awesome?" Whereas, from the past, I wouldn't say that is the most focused on issue within an organization. I think there's a lot of other stuff that gets focused on, but I think in the future, from a human capital perspective, focusing on people, helping them achieve what they need to achieve will determine what kind of a leader you truly are.
Do people want to be a leader of people, or are they going back into the talent pool, if you will, as a creator? Because you've got to assume that middle management is where a lot of that thinning process is going to happen. With if Verity gets implemented in an organization, there's a good chance that the managers 360s that they do twice a year
Yep.
are now going to be gone, or the skip level into review is going to be gone, because a tool like Verity is going to provide such a more robust evaluation of what's going on throughout over time and always on, that middle manager's now like, what's my point? What's my purpose? So if I'm not a senior manager, as you mentioned, reaching down into the talent pool and saying, how do I help these people succeed? Really, the only other option, am I right, is to go back into being a creative person.
This is what and that goes right back to 2 points ago, where we said, look, if you want to secure yourself for the future, being very creative and being very solution oriented is going to be a way to be relevant in the future. I don't see any other way, I must be honest with you.
Okay.
A lot of the repetitive tasks, a lot of the 360s, a lot of that performance management type of stuff, really, that's going to be automated. It's going to be going to be augmented for sure. Being able to find insights in the data that comes out of that environment.
But there's a different skill set.
And then, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about, and I go right back to the beginning of our conversation when I said I believe all humans have unlimited potential in them. I just think we've been taught at times to be, number one, lazy.
Yeah.
Number two, have limited expectations of ourselves. And number three, we may just not have the mojo at this particular point to take the next step. And so when you talk about great leadership, it's about helping people recognize those things, challenging them very organically, and then putting an ecosystem in place that allows them to really fluctuate into awesome people.
To manage their own careers, to manage their own situations.
100%. To be self-reliant in chasing their dreams. And I think that would go a long way in dealing with the disengagement. I mean, you think about this for a minute, 70% of people around the world at some level are disengaged from their jobs. Just really hate it. They're looking for other stuff. Yeah. And can you imagine living like that?
Oh, it'd be horrible.
That'd be terrible.
Horrible. Anyway, hey, bang the table, make the camera shake. Thank you. Yeah, this has been fun. Always a good conversation. If you do have a comment, if you are watching this, you do have some thoughts about middle management, about this augmentation that's happening from not just from a staffing perspective, but from a bots technology increase, an
AI thing.
Yeah, if you have thoughts on that, you have questions, you disagree with what we're saying, hey, bring it on. We would love to hear those questions. And if you have other ideas on what you want to hear Hans talk about, he's got a massive list behind us here, but
we didn't get to it.
Let us know. Anyway, we'll do this again.
Awesome.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
See you later. We'll show you some shots of Auckland so you can see how beautiful the city is.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
See ya.
Gorgeous.